My name is Steve Williams. I'm very, very happy to have with me here Camille and Ruxandra, who are going to talk about different aspects of sustainability. We've got a pretty small group, so we can we've got a few things that we want to talk about, some different dimensions of that. And then we'll kind of get into, we have more of a discussion and a dialogue. So maybe we'll do quick intros first. Do you want to introduce yourself and then you and then me, and I'll do my little intro to the session and then we'll move on. So.
Yeah, sure. So very quick intro. Hi, everyone. My name is Camille. I am the co-founder of Bye Bye Plastic Foundation, which I co-founded together with a DJ named Blondish. And I'm also the director of Bye Bye Plastic in Europe.
I'm Ruxandra. Thank you for having me. Hello, everybody. I'm wearing two hats today. I'm representing TravelPerk. I'm the content production manager for them, so I help them organize their marketing campaigns, especially on sustainability and future of work topics. And then I'm also the co-founder of Cabana Libre, who's an event organizer based in Barcelona. So I'm going to touch a bit on a bit of both today in our talk.
And my name is Steve Williams. I'm from Canada, but live in Berlin. And I also have two hats. So one, I'm a researcher at the Institute for Advanced Sustainability Studies in Potsdam. And a lot of my work is on energy system transition in Canada and Germany and Sweden, looking more at the social, cultural, political parts of change. I'm not really into solar panel design and that kind of stuff. And then the other part is I'm a live electronic performer, drusnoise, and bring sustainability themes into the music. And there actually, when I was doing my PhD, my niece and nephew called me Dr. Uncle Steve. So that's the DRUS of drusnoise for my artist name. So yeah, those bits are connected. So I just have one slide. I just kind of want to set up this idea of, because we talked about this ecosystem, and I think it's really important when we're talking about sustainability to think about a lot of these different dimensions of electronic music ecosystem. Is that, of course, we have DJs and producers and event people, but all of these kind of things are connected. And streaming platforms, clubs, labels, hardware makers, bookers, merch, all those different kind of things. And those are all kind of either things or people, but then those are surrounded by all of these different dimensions and things we want to be looking at, whether it's travel, waste, energy, justice, water, materials, consumption, and culture, which is something we'll get into a little bit about around what is a culture of consumption? What does it mean to be a successful artist? What does it mean to be a successful club? How do those things actually fit into these different dimensions and concepts of sustainability? So I don't know if we'll be able to cover every single piece, but we'll definitely be able to dive into a few, because I think between the three of us, we actually touch on quite a lot of those elements. And I think the two last bits around that is that these are all drawn as separate circles, but they're not really independent pieces. Energy and travel are related together. Festivals and travel are connected together. Materials and DJs and culture are related together. Clubs and justice are related, or should be related anyway. We can't look at anyone independently. So I think it could be an interesting conversation showing how those different pieces kind of fit together. So we're going to kind of go into a detail of a few elements of that, and then we'll be able to have some conversation and hopefully with you as well. And actually, sorry, just one thing I forgot to do. I'm not even following. I played a set last night, so my brain's a little fried. But I am curious about sort of who's in the room. So since we can actually go through all of you. So I'm curious, maybe just sort of starting over here, of the red circles, where would you put yourself in there? We're just kind of curious, what are the types of people here and kind of what angle they're coming from, and you maybe in more than one circle as well. And if you could just use the mic, because they're recording the session, so if you could speak into the mic when you talk, that'd be great, just so we have an idea of who's in the room, kind of what things you're bringing. So yeah, maybe start off back here and then pass it around.
Hi, my name is Lindy Delight. I actually fit into quite a few of these circles. I'm a 360-degree music and event manager. I do artist management, showcase management, brand management. So I fit into quite a few of these circles.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Benny, and I'm coming more from the producing side. So I produce since 3 years. Mm-hmm. And now I'm working also in an agency focused on creativity, like music artists and fashion, e-commerce.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
This side.
Great. Pass it up to the front here. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Bastian. I'd say I would fall under the DJ side and also the producer side.
So DJ and producer.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Producing of events.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, producing events. Okay, got it.
Hello, I'm Tofik. I would say also fall in the DJ production side, but it's been quite a while since
Right.
it have, I would say, retired for a bit.
Oh, retired. Okay. Retired. Okay. Awesome. Cool. Thank you. That's great. So let me just bring up your slides. Let's do that.
On the bottom?
Oh, on the bottom?
There's this PowerPoint.
Yeah.
This one?
This
Is
one?
this yours?
Yes. And then,
So is this the right one? Nope.
yeah.
Okay. Yep. Okay. So yeah, just let me know and I can, or if you want, you can
Yeah,
just
I
hit
can
the.
press.
There you go. Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so I'm just gonna give you a really quick intro. I wanted to talk about why we're here today. First of all, I'm really happy that there's a panel talking about sustainability at Berlin Dance Music Event this year. I'm very happy that Camille came to join me to talk about it. And I think that the reason why it should be an ongoing topic is because it's something that is part of the music industry, whether we want to admit it or not, that we need to care about it or not, it's there and it's something we should look at. And I think something that connects everybody that's here, everybody that's in the event is the love for music that speaks all languages. Doesn't matter where you're from, or where you're born, or how you were raised. At the end of the day, you can understand the sounds that you hear, and you can relate to them. And if you're a DJ that's based in Barcelona, and you discover music made in Goa in India, there's an instant connection there, even though you don't speak the same language. And since the internet, the access to this music is is very facilitated. And now you have the option to also get in touch with the artists and the DJs and the creators that you admire from across the seas or whatever they are. So you have the freedom to invite them over for your own event and be like, hey, come showcase the connection that we made through music to my friends and family and the other guys that I'm throwing parties with. So then the element of travel inevitably gets added to the ecosystem in which we're in. But yes, as I'm one of the hats that I'm wearing today is from TravelPerk, which, you know, it's hard to talk about sustainability and talk about travel and put the two of them together and then believe that what a travel company is saying about sustainability actually, that they mean it. But something that we truly care and stand behind, both from TravelPerk and Cabana Libre, is that climate change is real and it's a very, very big threat, and it's been coming for a long time, and there are a lot of signals showing in all directions, and I think a lot more can be done considering the threat that we're facing. So I want to talk a bit about how we can be a bit more conscious when it comes to travel in the music industry, and what are some small steps and tips and tricks that we can all do and take in order to alleviate a bit of the pressure that we're putting on our planet. So just as a one quick word that I think it's going to tie in very nicely with how you opened it, Steve, is like, so we are the platform that facilitates human connection in real life. So COVID happened. We've all been there. We've all made it out on the other side, which is very, very amazing. And we also very, very clearly that if there's no travel and the airplanes are grounded, the pollution goes down super fast. There was amazing numbers and results following the stop of travel. However, we're also seeing right now that the moment that COVID went down, travel has boomed back. So everybody wants to get back to seeing one another. You want to go see your favorite artist. You want to invite your artist to your city to play together. So even though we're aware of the downside of travel, we still want to do it because in the end, in real life is the way you want to live your life. You don't want to be on the metaverse and in a Zoom call 24/7. So we're gonna try to alleviate a bit on the amount of pressure that we're putting on the environment. And what I wanted to show a bit today from a travel point of view to put you through this scenario. So at any event that happens, there's two big parts in the end. There's the production, so everybody that's organizing it, and then you have the audience that's traveling to come to the event, and then they're going to travel back or go whatever, the different party maybe after yours. So in these two instances, when it comes to travel, there's one part that you as an event organizer, as a festival organizer, as a conference organizer, you do have control over, and that's the production side. So in the production side, I think Stevie also mentioned there's just so many. You have the manufacturers, engineers, you have your artists, your media team. There's so many different types of stakeholders that you need to take into account in order to create a successful event. And here is where you have the option to control the way they travel to your event. You can book the travel for them, for example, because anyway you're going to refund them or whatever the agreement you have with them. And then you can choose to offset the carbon of the production that is traveling to and from the event. We can talk about the difference in that. Obviously, offsetting carbon is always going to add a tax to it. It's not for free, unfortunately, yet, but hoping that things are going to go down. I think Camille we're going to talk about some options on how to bring this cost down and alternatives to it. But at the end of the day, just as you have this entire ecosystem of different stakeholders that you need, sustainability should be one of the names that is added to it, and you should budget for it from the beginning when you create the party planning. And yes, and on the other side we have the audience, which we don't have control over how they're coming to the event, but we do have control over how we present their journey to the event. So we can incentivize, we can educate. As a party organizer, you can tell them like, hey, this is how we do it for the production side. We think that it's more beneficial because of this and this reason. We encourage you to do the same, and here's some incentives that we can give you in order to make it easier. And yeah, I'm gonna go through this very fast because I'm really not here to sell TravelPerk. I'm here to talk about how to travel more sustainably. But a thing that I think should be it's important to mention is that one of the reasons why travel is so scattered and it's very hard to control with all the stakeholders that you have is because currently everybody is booking by themselves, or you get your artist that wants a certain type of hotel, you get your producers that want a certain flight because they need to pick up their kids from the kindergarten first, for example. When this happens, it will be very, very difficult for you to try to offset the carbon, to understand, first of all, how much did I produce? Like, how much are my artists using through their travels, and how can I compensate for it? So I'm definitely recommending putting it all in one place, get one report on how much did everybody together emit, get one invoice for it, have an overview of the entire thing, read your results, very important, don't just have them there, look at them, analyze them, try to think of, okay, what are some goals that we can put to reduce as much as you want, it's possible, whatever it is. And yeah, implement policies that will help you do that. For example, if you see in your team's behavior that everybody is booking business class just because they booked their flights 2 days before and there was no availability in economy, just make a policy that says you need to book your flight at least 2 weeks before the event. That's gonna force them to think about it in advance, cost a lot as well, and it's better for the environment because business class, not that great. And then just as the last part, I just want to go through a very quick example of what can happen if you try to educate and inspire and incentivize your audience to change their travel behavior. And as I'm based in Barcelona, I'm coming with an example from Sonar. And the amount of people that they had in their festival in 2019 was 126,000 visitors. And what I want to do through this exercise is just to show you how a very, very small change in travel behavior can cause quite an impact. So out of those 126,000, we had it was pretty much almost half and half. Yeah, we have 54% from Spain and 46% international. So in terms of travel behavior, I will take the international away because you need flights for this one, let's say. It's a lot more complicated than taking a train. Well, let's have a look what would happen if the people from Spain would take the train to the festival instead of a flight. Let's say that 40,000 out of the 54% are from Barcelona. So they're not traveling far. They're going to take a cab, a metro, whatever it is. So let's say that the other 28,000 are outside from Spain and they're going to take the train to Sonar instead of the flight. I put here as an average 300 kilometers just as a number to explain the exercise. And what I want to show you here is that the first number you see there, which is 0.4 carbon emissions that you create, that's what happens if you're traveling 300 kilometers in a plane, in a economy class. So it's 0.4 per kilometer. And if you do it by train, it's 0.04. Quite a big difference by default if you look at those numbers. So if you calculate the difference of carbon emissions that you're creating, it's a 90% reduction if 28,000 people would take a train instead of a flight to Sonar. So, yeah, my conclusion is let sustainability talk from the beginning. Budget for it from the beginning, just like you're budgeting for everything else you need. Add offsetting as part of the conversations, give incentives, and be vocal about their actions. And then another part, my second hat that I wanted to show you just in 2 minutes is something that I think I'm gonna tie in with Camille right now. It's the use of reusable materials in general and avoiding single-use whatever. And this is a value that we're standing behind very much in Cabana Libre. One of our core values is save the whales, and we want to do that by trying to have as much trash in the ocean as possible that we produce that's going to end up there. And I have a super quick video of this would work. No, we can skip it, it's fine. And what I wanted to say on the reusable materials, because we're going to talk about it more, so I don't want to go too much in depth in it, is that it makes a difference when you show that you actually care about the environment, that you show through your decorations and what you set up there, that the materials you use are sustainable, that you can take the same stage that you built for one event and just revamp it in a different way for the next one. People will notice it and they will appreciate it and they will talk about it. And it really creates an impact in the community that you're trying to build, helping you having repeat customers and repeat dancers on the dance floor. And this is my last slide. Hope I didn't bore everybody. But long story short, what I'm recommending today is to automate everywhere where you can in order to be able to have a better overview of what you're creating, what you're talking, what are you emitting. Make a plan on how to actually offset and reuse as much as possible. Pretty much walk the talk. Don't just talk about it. Don't just put it in your website of like, we're environmentally friendly, and then it's just a statement that you're probably going to print it on a big plastic banner in front. Yeah, you have the power to make those changes, especially by calculating for it from the beginning. Make it part of your rider. And yeah, that's it from me. So I hope it inspired at least a bit.
All right, awesome. Thank you for that. And so, yeah, why don't we, I'll see if I can get your presentation up. Yeah, maybe, because I think this one is in PDF. I think PDF. You sent a PDF.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, awesome.
Cool. Thank you. So, taking the mic after a lot of really insightful ideas and trails that we're gonna follow. Indeed, I think there's the idea of embedding sustainability at day zero that we're gonna want to think about, as well as what you said, late aggregating. But yeah, presenting a little bit about Bye Bye Plastic Foundation. So we're a nonprofit that's helping the music industry to reduce single-use plastics. And with single-use plastics, we're tackling two problems, which is the single-use culture and the fossil fuel plastic culture. So these are like two great challenges, basically. What we're doing in the industry is that we're unifying, empowering, and activating every stakeholder of the industry in order for them to be able to propel a positive culture of change. A bit of like root and history over how this happened. So I co-founded, as you see on the bottom of the slide, this was co-founded together by myself and Blondish, a DJ who had already several years of experience in the industry, and who really realized, we both realized there was not just a responsibility for the music industry to act and to be acting upon its own footprint, just like any other industry. Today, we all have a responsibility, we all have a power of action, but the events and music sector has an incredible opportunity to be changing the culture and to be helping the dialogue to evolve in a positive and in an accelerated way. When we are at events, and we've seen how much we have missed this over the last 2.5 years. When we're at events, we're connecting with new people, with new values, with new origins at a rate that's completely unprecedented to any other areas, to any other occasions, basically, socially. And this is where the opportunity lies for the event sector. So this is what we're here to cater, basically. So very quickly, this is how our ecosystem works. We have two sides to our activities, which you see in orange over here. One side is awareness and education. Basically what we say is that knowledge is power, power is action. You need to know what are the problems, what are the topics at stake in order to be able to want to and be empowered to act upon them. And the second part is impact. We're not just talking, we mentioned that. It's not just leading with advocacy, but also walking the talk. That's extremely important for us, and that's what we really instigate in all of our programs and activity. And we start with DJs and artists, as we figured we understood that they are the voice of influence and of change in this industry. With the DJs and artists, we can get to their fans and audiences, and we build a bridge to events and festivals that have this power of this purchase power that's basically exponential compared to one individual. You have a purchase power as a promoter, as an event organizer, as a business that is catering for huge crowds. And this is your purchase power here. This is what you're able to also tell to society. So that's what we're empowering venues to understand via plastic-free transitions in this industry. I think I'll stop here and let you go through some questions, and then we can go through a few more slides as we go.
All right. So okay. So let me just talk. I had a couple of slides.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to talk about three quick ideas here, and then have some more conversation. So one of the things that I think is often It's been a long day. Is often missed in conversations around sustainability is the element of justice. And my colleague Andrea Andoyan and I wrote a couple of papers about this, and it was interesting. We were presenting at an academic conference, and we actually got a question from the audience, and someone asked, like, why are you talking about justice? Like, why does justice matter in sustainability? And we were actually quite taken aback. We didn't expect to actually need to answer that question. But when we were looking at it, I think there's a couple of reasons. One, in my opinion, I think that a sustainability or a sustainability transition that is not just is not actually sustainable. Like, I think justice is actually a core part of sustainability. But there's also a very practical reason, is that when justice is not included in sustainability and kind of programs that we do, if people feel that they're being left behind, if their voice is not valued, then they can reject some of these transitions. And you see that happening in the Lausitz region in Germany with a very where the AfD is very prominent. You see it with Brexit. You see it in coal country with Trump, the Gilets jaunes in France. And there's an important reason to consider justice. And one of the things I just wanted to highlight about this is just gender and is only one element of justice, but female pressure are an amazing group that do a lot of really interesting data and research. And they put together this report looking at the growing proportion of basically non-male artists in festivals. So this is festivals over time. And it's interesting seeing that, okay, so there's good news and bad news. So good news, okay, that proportion is definitely growing. But still only growing to just a 28% female representation of artists at festivals. So just as you were both talking about, and this is one of the key elements of our talk, is that there are things that we can do as bookers, and also as audiences. Ask people, why is it only guys that are playing on this bill? Like, why is this lineup looking like this? So there are things that we can do. The other element that I wanted to talk about quickly was around manufacturing. So at Superbooth, which is a big, one of the biggest synthesizer modular trade fairs in Berlin, it was here last weekend, and I had a goal of talking to all the vendors, but there was actually 150 vendors, and I quickly realized how long that actually takes. So I talked to 25 over a couple of days, and I'm going to continue to email out the rest of them. But I was asking them questions about how they think about sustainability, what that means to them. Are they thinking about sustainability? But I just want to highlight what I thought were some interesting numbers. So this was, how much do you think about sustainability in your business, with 1 being never and 5 being all the time. And with one outlier, almost everybody was at a 4 and 5. But then the next question I asked was, how much do your customers ever ask you about sustainability? And almost never. And I thought that was really quite interesting, is that sometimes the vendors will start a conversation about sustainability. They'll talk about their sustainability practices, but customers are almost never asking about that. So I thought there was a really interesting connection back to those sort of connected things about how do we actually get people to start thinking about that? So you wanted to ask.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So you said that was at a festival, right?
No, this was at a trade show. So so these are all hardware manufacturers that I was talking to.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then when I asked them about how do they think about sustainability, these were the top answers. So obviously packaging is a big one, shipping, product materials, end of life, manufacturing locations was a big one. A lot of people are actually assembling these things in Berlin, but the cost of that is actually quite a bit higher. But one of the things I thought was quite interesting around the materials that actually go into this, it does get back to this philosophy and what you were saying, Camille, about thinking about that at day zero, is that one of the manufacturers I talked to, he said, we design our synths for you and your kids and your grandchildren. And their idea is that this will last for like 50 years before it needs to get thrown away. And almost all of them also do repairs to sort of stop things from going to the landfill. So they don't even need to think about reusing or recycling materials, because they repair it and then send it back to you. That also has some interesting contradictions where around packaging and shipping, where a lot of manufacturers are trying to get away from plastic in their shipping. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But they also have to balance between, if it gets wet in international shipment, if the electronics get damaged, they actually have to send it back and replace it, which defeats the purpose of getting rid of the plastic. But I found it interesting is that, well, not everyone had solved these problems. Every single manufacturer was thinking about it. They were all thinking about materials, all thinking about cardboard, all thinking about these things. And really, I asked another question about what's getting in the way of doing this. And a lot of it was knowledge, just not knowing how do I source sustainable materials? How do I get PCB boards printed in the EU versus China, where it costs €2 to produce it in China and €100 to produce it in the EU. So for a small manufacturer that's just printing 5 PCB boards to test out their ideas, it's just not possible to do that in the EU. And then the final thing I wanted to talk about was this idea around actually embedding sustainability into the music. And so that's a shot from one of my last gigs. So that plant has electrodes connected to it that actually feed into my modular synthesizer. So the electricity of the plant is actually generating the pitches and the gates. And so the plant is basically playing the synthesizer, which I love because it's by itself is not sustainable. And someone commented on that on Instagram. And it's not meant to say like all music should be plant generated, but it's more to highlight the idea of the interconnections of things, but also how alive music actually is. So when I rehearse in my apartment in the afternoon, the plant has sunlight and it's bouncing around all over the place. And in a club at 3 a.m, the plant is asleep and it's kind of much more modulated. Or if I put it on everyone's skin, we all have different body mass index, fat content, heart rate, blood pressure, weight, all these kind of things that affect the electricity we generate. So I really like these ideas of sustainability as part of the music to get people to think about that. And also like a couple of tracks that I played last night had sustainability lectures. So I got permission from lecturers in Germany and France and Canada and China to use their lectures embedded into my techno. So trying to not preach, not proselytize, but kind of embed it subtly. And techno is great for that because usually the vocals are like super distorted and reverb. You can't really understand what's going on. So a subliminal piece. And then that photo there is an abandoned power station in Berlin. And the Berlin State Opera is doing a concert there next week. And they're doing a series of concerts that are sustainability themed. So the one on Tuesday next week has a theme around oceans and glaciers. So they've worked with the composer and the orchestras. So that's not electronic music. This is, well, you can't really say classical music when the piece was just written this year, or maybe, I don't know, but it's with an orchestral music, but this idea of sustainability themes in the music. And I just wanted to bring that up because everything that you two have talked about is amazing because it touches on, actually didn't have time, but it's interesting to actually go back to those circles and see how many of those different circles we actually talk about, but they are kind of connected. So I'm not going to, so that's the last slide I have. I just want to kind of raise some pieces and maybe we can move into the questions. And I did have some questions for you too, but I thought given where we are in the sort of the small group, maybe we can actually see if there's questions from the audience and then we can see if we can pick up on it. Or is there anything you want to add before we do that?
That was good. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about in all of those segments.
Right.
Definitely, I think that's super interesting. I'll have lots to talk about each of the segments, so we can see there's questions and then circle back to it.
All right, great, cool.
Lots of content to share.
So yeah, so before we get back to the panel, I'd love to hear from you around your thought, whether you have specific questions about what you heard or general ideas or things that have been sparked or any insights you have, anything you want to talk about. We're a relatively small group, so hopefully we can keep it kind of more conversational rather than just, we don't want it to just, I'll start that again. We don't want it to be all just us talking at you for the whole session. So I think the mic is somewhere there. Does anyone have any thoughts or ideas that we want to share or questions for any of us?
Maybe I can.
Yeah. So we just, because they're recording the session just so we can get your question as well. Thanks.
Yeah, I was really interested in one of the slides about the justice and the gender ratio, which was actually very, how can I say, very interesting. And I'm very happy to see the rise from 9-year difference that is almost like 300%. I'm curious, do you see, at what certain point do you see that there will be equality in terms of the percentages, or maybe even let's say, there will be a more female ratio? And also, what variables are the one that led to this raise? Because I'm curious, is it because we're like making more awareness, or I was just curious about this really.
So there's a couple of things there. So one, I think, unfortunately, we have a long way to go till we get to parity, because Female Pressure, they also just released an open letter. It was just last month in Frankfurt. There's I think it's called the Museum of Modern Dance Music. And they released an open letter pointing out that all of the DJs that played at the opening event were male. The director of the opening event is male. And everyone that's on the board of directors of the museum is male. So that's sort of 0%, not even at that 29%. But I think it is, in terms of the growth, awareness groups like Female Pressure that are doing that. But for me, it kind of comes back to that, the culture, and both of you talked a little bit, sort of what is normal. And that I think as long as it's considered that it's not a big deal if a lineup is all male and all white, if that's kind of seen as, okay, that's kind of normal, then that's when it needs to be that's not how things should be. So there's a whole bunch of different, that's a very simplistic answer, because this is also looking at female representation, but there's also looking at across a whole gender identity spectrum, or across with people, artists of color or artists with disabilities. A friend of mine, she works in the queer community in the disabled arts space. So even things like getting funding for rehearsals, and she works with a lot of people with disabilities that just don't necessarily have the capacity to rehearse for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. So how do you actually manage that and sort of fit that into a system that's designed for this type of people exclusively at all kind of different levels? So, yeah.
Yeah, I think to that I would say, like, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of dynamics, but like raising the voice is an opportunity. Is something that's been that we've seen both in the music industry and in many different industries that help move the lines, and that I think will be the key to other movements and other social issues to evolve. And when it comes to one thing I wanted to say on justice and sustainability is it's the same, like injustice in sustainability and like access to like environmental health is a topic, and it's gonna be continuing. It's gonna grow in more inequalities if you don't talk about it. There's a great person who started the channel, Leah Thomas. She started intersectional environmentalist. So she's talking about like how all these topics interweave basically, and how it's really it's not covered by mass media at the moment. We're just starting to grow into the topic of climate change and how much of a challenge that is, but there are parts of the populations that have even less access to healthy air, to less risks, less environmental risk, especially, for example, in the US, where disparities are even bigger. People of color being in front line to oil spills, poor air quality, etc. That's also how we designed our cities in the first place in Europe. The suburbs that were getting the worst air, they were looking at the air dynamic, and the factories would be, the air would be going to the poorest suburbs basically. So we gotta talk about this, and we gotta raise the knowledge again in order to make sure that we balance it back.
Thanks. Yes. Could you pass? Yeah. Sorry, I can't even speak anymore. Thank you.
I don't know so much if I have a question, more as a comment, because I look at this graph here and I see festival acts. Why are we putting so much attention on festival acts? We're looking at behind who the decision makers are to program these conferences, or sorry, program these festivals. So you look behind and we see the decision makers. Then we look at where are the decision makers presented, and we look at music conferences like this, where we bring people to talk about their expertise. Mm-hmm. We should be also looking at the diversity of those conferences, and why, and even where we're at with the percentages. Because I can say, as a woman of color myself, when I go to conferences, I'm one of the very few. Where are we showing the example to show people of color to come into the music industry, to become decision makers, to make sure these graphs are more are have better proportions? It's not about festival acts. It really isn't. It's like it's what people see because they go to festivals, but there's a huge music industry that's totally separate from music festivals that also needs to be more balanced. So we need to take a few steps back before looking at graphs like this, in my opinion.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, that's the most front end indicator that we can start get as the conversation starter. But yeah, need to go way deeper indeed. There's another interesting dynamic that we've started seeing, observing as well in when it comes to like, be it, well, for the moment, music and sustainability, like, which is Biber Classic is female led, which has been just happened naturally in the first place, and but we see that like without looking at it, we're attracting the people, and the allies we're attracting are more and more women, and it's like we just don't want this to be, but we're starting to question like, is, you know, we have to look at the facts that we're surrounded by just more women who want to act upon this. And so then the question is going to come of like, how do we change this? How do we change the tide? Because like we need everybody. We need everybody in this movement. We need everybody involved. So yeah, just an observation in there. No,
I can echo that a lot. I think in Barcelona, the female movement in general is quite strong recently. I'm very surprised to see. Like I'm part of one collective that is fully women, 7 DJs together. In Cabana Libre, we are 10 people in total, and we have 2 guys, and the rest are female. And exactly that's what happens. They see other women see like, oh, I've always wanted to try being a DJ or being a VJ or producing or whatever it is, but I didn't see the representation. And I see you guys, so I'm going to join you. And it's amazing. We love that. But indeed, now it's going just towards women. And like, that was not the point. We want to bring women as well, but that doesn't mean that the men are excluded from the conversation. But it feels like those separations happen very, very easily for... even though you don't market yourself like that at all. It's just, I think it's about indeed confidence. Like you see other girls doing it, you're like, oh, okay, then I'm going to join this train because they're doing it as well. But they should feel comfortable to join any train, whatever crew, producer, or whatever it is. Even if it's just male and you'd be the first woman there, go for it. But yeah, it's some groups that feel safer than others, I guess.
Yeah, like having mentors and role models to abide to is what's going to help the dynamic in any representation. Yeah. Thanks for that. But I think the only thing I would add is I 100% agree that this is the data that I could get, but that work actually needs to be done, and I think that's one of the things I found. I mean, first of all, it's interesting. So this is the first sustainability panel that this event has had. So it's there's amazing groups like Music Plays Emergency and other kind of people doing that. But I think there's just not nearly as much data as there is, for example, in aviation or cars or like that have a lot of people sort of looking at that. So I understand it because it also, for me, relates to, we talked about this earlier around, we talked about the decision makers. It's also about that how that culture affects things like travel, where if a successful DJ plays in London on Thursday and Amsterdam on Friday and Berlin on Saturday and Mallorca on Sunday, if they say, okay, well, I want to be sustainable, I'm just going to stay in one place. But all of their decision makers say, okay, well, no, you've got to go there or you're not going to be on our label anymore. Then it really takes that how much power, how much agency does that individual artist actually have? So I think it's a really good point. I mean, this is an interesting thing to show, but it masks a lot of what's actually behind that. So yeah, thanks for that. Cool. Any other thoughts, questions, or critiques? Yeah, as well. I appreciate that.
Maybe I can add just one thing. I'm just curious about one topic as well.
Sure.
I mean, I think we're talking a lot. What we're touching upon is very valuable, but we're also referring it to like Western culture. What do we do with non-Western culture in terms of sustainability, where there's not much awareness? Like me as an individual who comes from non-Western culture, I know that there's a huge amount of waste. There's a lack of awareness. Also in terms of gender as well, like it wouldn't be easy for like, let's say for someone to, as a woman, to go and become a DJ because there's the stigma upon it and all of this. So I was just curious, what plans do we have for the future for that? Because I think all we were talking about here was related more to like Western culture where there's high awareness on it. And I think that would be my last part. I wouldn't ask anything else.
Yeah. I think you should be vocal about it. That's step number one. Put it on your website, put it in your core values, put it in your mission statement. Show that you are open for diversity and inclusion. Don't be shy of it. do your best not to go on the greenwashing trend, which is very, very easy to fall into when it's that you're just talking and not walking the talk. So I feel that we've been talking about sustainability for so many years, but I don't think enough people heard. I think that's for sure. So the conversation should definitely continue, but also coupled with action, not just conversation. And then people will follow, especially when you give them, hey, try this instead of that. This is the impact you might create. And at the moment, I guess it stands at the level of individual to take an action. But then if we look at employment, for example, and specifically in Spain, you get a fine as a company if you're not diverse enough. So you can go from individual to governmental policies that can be implemented to force this, but obviously that should not be, you shouldn't get to that level that the government tells you, hey, also hire women of color or women in the first place. So talking about it definitely, and walking the talk, generally speaking, I think.
Yeah, and to relating this problem and this, well, not a problem, but this topic and how to approach it. How could I approach it, or could we approach it as Westerners? If I am tying it to the experience of Bye Bye Plastic, which has gained a lot of traction, internationally, and so we constantly get contacts and requests, from South America to India to lots of regions that we're not present in yet, and where when we post a video about a cleanup, about how much talking about waste and single-use plastics in general, we always get, oh, you should come over here, you should go over there, and that's to us that's just highlighting pointing the obvious, which is single-use plastic is a global problem and is a global phenomenon and it should be tackled with global solutions, and we're always a bit torn. We want to obviously solve the entire world's problem. We're unfortunately not able to. We're still a growing team, and so we've had a lot of talks about this. And what we come back to is we can make sure that we lead by example and that we produce the most innovative impact in our region to make sure that, because what I can only speak about Western Europe and the US, and that's where I know that I can have the most impact both sustainably and culturally, and that's what I want to be able to show to the world in order to help the dynamics to change further. And that's also what I feel we can use as an element of conversation to other people who might be looking a bit too quick at numbers or criticizing. I remember having this conversation about when some data was talked about how China is the biggest polluter, but when you relate it back to the CO2 emission per inhabitant, this is not China, it's the US. So you have to think about, data per se can cater for any conversation. It's about how do you critically look at it. So it's not China the problem at the moment. They are in a stage of their development, but the US has more financial capacity to change at a quicker rate. So from this you can flip the script a little bit, and then maybe the US and Western Europe should be the leaders of example and help also.
Yeah. I think maybe just one thing I'd add for that is just that thinking about, I think it's really important that sustainability can be context specific and people have a chance to figure out what that means for themselves. I mean, one of the pieces that I wrote recently, kind of more not on the music side, but on the academic side, was how Indigenous peoples are represented in literature about sustainability transitions. And there's often a lot of discussion from different disciplines of integrating Indigenous knowledge, integrating traditional ecological knowledge. But usually what that means is taking that knowledge and translating it and changing it to fit into Western conceptions of what science actually means, as opposed to actually recognizing it as equally legitimate and valuable in its own right. And I think that also implies should apply to sustainability concepts, where how that develops in different regions can have different and different challenges. Like, so for example, the example used about train, I saw a presentation by Zoom from a Nigerian DJ and producer, and she was talking about the cost of air travel between countries in her region was so high. It was basically cheaper for her to fly to Berlin than to fly and do a tour locally. So that's a different context than living in Berlin, where I can fly to London for 12 euros on EasyJet or something. So those contexts are going to be different in terms of how different sustainability challenges are addressed. So, which is kind of what I think it's important to have people part of that conversation rather than being told what to do, but respect that context and that culture.
Oh, sorry.
While I've been listening to you guys talking, there's a thought that came to mind, which currently, at least in my world, there's a huge shift of what people are working for. They're changing jobs left and right. And when you change jobs, you take the tools with you that you have, right? You take the Excel sheets that you like, or the modules, whatever works for you, you take it with you and implement it in your next job. And I'm wondering, what can individual employees switching jobs take with them if they want to, as you say, put sustainability at the front of it? Because my Excel sheet is not going to solve sustainability, but maybe if I come there and I have some tools in that sense, it could help further along.
I think step number one is, reading your results, analyzing what new company did you end up in, what is the culture there, how do they do things, and then if you see let's say, do they use only plastic cups in their kitchen? This is an option to be like, hey, how about we switch this something else? Or you see that in their travel. They always go for business class flights. That's just the company policy. You'd be like, okay, this is cool. Let's do it once in a while, but maybe we can reduce to economy. And I think there's so many more examples that we can come up with like this. But I think step number one is be aware of your surroundings. Like, where am I? What is happening around me? Is there something? Am I okay with everything that's happening around me? And is there anything that maybe I have a different opinion on and I could actually improve in some way?
Yeah, and I would add to that, like, if the question is like, what tools can they bring to make a difference, to make a change, and to continue this change, this path, whatever it is, and this is valid for sustainability or for anything else, is like, first take the time for feedback, take the time to reflect, and that does need investing in even just a slight bit of time to just think about what you're taking to the next chapter and to the next adventure. And actually that it's funny how this circles back to sustainability being integrated at day zero. Just take the minimal time to think, okay, this needs to come at the first stage, at the first point. The same way you're going to start by building a budget sheet when you start an event, when you start any project, you need to embed with sustainability in the first place. And it's just investing in that small amount of time is like, you are going to realize that it's not so much time, and that's going to make a huge difference, because that's going to surface all the questions you have and all the gaps you have and all the people that you might need to involve further in your process. Oh, I don't have the answer to that. Let me ask. Oh, maybe you should do a company or a group survey to get to the next answers, to see what people think about most, prefer, etc. I would say time is of essence here.
I think maybe two quick things. One is to always be looking for like-minded people. There's usually some group of people that are interested in some of those issues. But I think the other thing I'd really come back to is when you talked about, in answer to an earlier question, when you were talking about the business travel policy. To me, I think really taking a look at what policies are and how can things actually be embedded, because it's one thing to have sort of nice mission statements on the company website, but what people actually pay attention to is, what do they get paid for? What gets them a bonus? What gets them promoted? What's actually written into policies? What's in their professional code of ethics and their codes of conduct? and those are super boring things to look at, but I mean, humans follow those kind of things. They know what that takes. And if those kind of things incentivize or reward one set of behavior, then people are going to do that regardless of what the website says. So that's really something to kind of look at. You know, what are those kind of policies and rules?
Yeah, definitely. And like sustainability, like there's a few really great examples of this and how COVID has also helped sustainability to progress in the event, in the music sector, and I'm sure in many other sectors as well. Like finally, people had the time to just sit, because we all know how like our industry is very much of a, you know, last minute, you know, everything's for yesterday. Everything's like a big rush to event date. And so COVID was a blessing in disguise in that regard. There's a few really great examples that you can look that are surfacing right now. I know that Shawn Mendes released a green touring plan for his upcoming tour together with Hope Solutions. Absolutely amazing work, mind-blowing work. Coldplay has been in this path for years, and they're really starting to break through with new policies as well for their new tours. This is really great. So yeah, this time we need to think collectively as an industry that we're allowed and we should take it.
Yeah, and Massive Attack did some really cool work with the Tyndall Centre for Climate Change Research in the UK, and sort of looked at similar to what you were talking about with the travel. So when you buy a ticket for your show, that includes a transit pass for the day to include people to do that. Yeah. So I see we're actually just past time. So just before we wrap up, are there any final questions before and you guys are going to be around for a while? People want to grab you and keep talking?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
Definitely.
Cool. So any last questions before we wrap up? Cool. So maybe, why don't I give the final word to you? Maybe what's one thing that you'd like people to be taking away from the session as they move forward? All of sustainability in one thing.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm like, should I conclude on time again? Because I think the other thing I was thinking of concluding on was more the voice. You know, we all have a voice, as in we have our voice is our power. Our choices are our power. It's a purchase power. It's really significant. Let no one tell you that it's not significant. So think about it take it out in your daily life, in your next event, in your next stream planning, whatever it is, but take it at your individual level and at your business company endeavor level. It is extremely important, this power that you have.
From my side, I guess I'll repeat myself a bit, but in general, one tip that I would give everybody is like, have a look around you. What are you currently doing? How are you doing? What are you doing? What is the policy of your event organizer? Whatever circle you find, the red circle you find yourself in. There's so many factors that you need to reply to. So just take a moment to reflect on like, how am I replying to this? Can I think of a better way to do it? And if yes, and I don't know how to do it, ask somebody that might give you some ideas, that can help you, that can guide you, that's been researching, for example, like the Tyndall Center, which we talked with last year as well. Very, very interesting researches that they did there. So I think that there's a lot of answers out there. You just need to ask the questions. So don't feel afraid to ask the question.
Yeah, like you don't think. We know there are a lot of answers around. Yeah. There's a lot of innovation and there's even more coming. So yeah, don't stop at the footstep. Really like go further. There's so many people innovating and finding creative and amazing climate solutions already.
Awesome. Right. Yeah. Thank you very much, Camille and Ruxandra, for your thoughts and insights.